Good morning everybody, my name's Ron, I will be your trainer today, and today we are going to be going through and looking at identifying hazards, assessing the risks and implementing controls in light vehicle brake systems when we inspect and service them. I would like to mention that we have my third party observer, Mr. Malcolm Morace, in today. He has his Cert 4 qualification in training and assessing, and he will be observing and carrying out an assessment on me. So, welcome. I will send around the student attendance sheet. If you guys can just fill that out, put your name, where you're from. You're obviously full-time pre-apprentices, so we'll pass that around. We've got Jensen. We've got Balin, we've got Brian, we've got Seth. If you guys just want to pass that around and fill that out. Whilst you're doing that, we'll talk about OC health and safety in the training room. Obviously we're going to be sitting in a chair for 30-minute duration. If you feel the need that you need to stand up and walk around, please do so. We don't want anyone suffering any kind of pain or cramp or anything like that, when we can just get up and walk around, get the blood flow and all that. So whilst we're doing that, I just thought I would mention that. If you need to stand up, please do so. Then we'll be talking about hazards, how we control them and what we can do. I'll just wait for everyone to complete that attendance record. Has anyone worked with braking systems? No? No one changed brake pads? No?
Yeah.
Okay, Ron. Yeah. Did you? Were you aware of the hazards?
Yes.
Yep. Like what?
Brake dust.
Brake dust. Number one hazard when working with light vehicle braking systems is brake dust. So most of today's brakes, or all brakes, would have some element of asbestos in them. So asbestos can cause respiratory problems if it gets blown around in the air. You can't see that, it's airborne particles, and those airborne particles are easily breathed in. So thank you, Brian, good answer. Number one hazard with brakes. Thank you. Just wait for Seth there to fill that out. So I'm going to be giving you a PowerPoint presentation on hazards associated with brakes when we're working on them. So, our number one, asbestos exposure. So historical brake components were mainly had asbestos in them. They have removed a certain element of asbestos out of brake pads and brake linings. However, we don't know. If you buy some brake pads, you don't know if it's got asbestos in it or not, or what the content is. So we would automatically assume that every brake pad material is going to have asbestos in it. We're not even going to think about whether it has or it hasn't. As far as we're concerned, it has, and it will cause serious respiratory conditions and mesothelioma. Big word. I'll try and keep it all simple for you. That is a condition of the lungs, causes breathing problems. You will have issues later on in life. So, our number one thing, we do not blow brake dust around or out of the brake system with compressed air. In the workshop, we want to keep everything contained, so we do not want to blow brake dust around with the compressed air and an air nozzle, because we're just going to expose everybody to brake dust. So there's a few ways we can control that, which we'll go through shortly. So we've got mechanical injuries, pinch points, sharp edges, heavy components, crushing injuries and strains. If you're using power tools, they also present a hazard. So if we're using power tools, whether they're electric, if they're electric, make sure you check the test and tag, make sure it's within date, make sure it's been inspected, and do your own inspection on the cord or anything like that. Impact guns, if you have to undo wheels with an impact gun, they also cause a bit of a hazard. The constant impacting on your wrist can cause musculoskeletal injuries from it constantly, like a jackhammer, undoing. So you've got to make sure you're aware of that. Some people use gloves. They do make more ergonomic handles and grips that absorb that kind of shock. Heavy components, brake drums, brake discs, the bigger they are, the heavier they're going to be. So manual handling, proper manual handling techniques is imperative so that you can use that. Crushing injuries. When we're lifting the car up to inspect the brake system, obviously we've got to jack the car up, whether that's on a jack, trolley jack, or a vehicle hoist. We've got to make sure we're using the equipment. It's got to have a safe working load for what we're going to lift. We've got to make sure we're using proper support. So axle stands, safety stands, if we're using a trolley jack, if we're using a vehicle hoist or lift, make sure you're lifting it on the proper lifting points. And make sure after you've raised it up to where you want it to be, that you lower it onto the safety locks. Okay? And you want it at a height that's going to be easy for you to remove that wheel and place it down without injury. If you have it right up in the air and you're trying to do that, you're going to risk some form of injury. If the wheel's heavy, it could fall on you. You want it at a level where you can remove it in a safe manner so make sure you don't get injured. We've also got chemical exposure. So, brake fluid is hygroscopic. Anyone heard that term before? No? Hygroscopic. So that is a substance that rapidly absorbs moisture. So every time we take the lid off our brake fluid to check our brake fluid in our car, that is automatically absorbing moisture from the atmosphere into that brake fluid. That will contaminate your brake fluid, and it will obviously lower the boiling point temperature of your brake fluid because it now has water present. So it can cause overheating of your brakes. Your brake fluid could evaporate, vaporise, you'll run out of brake pedal. It's also corrosive and can damage paint. So brake fluid, if you spill it on the paint of your car or anyone's car, make sure that we're going to wash that off immediately with water. Water dissolves brake fluid immediately, neutralises it, because it can damage the paint, it will take the paint off. So if brake fluid can take the paint off a car, imagine what it could do to your skin or your eyes or whatever. So we've got to make sure that we're wearing proper PPE. So make sure you're wearing safety glasses or goggles. Make sure you're wearing nitrile gloves. So you can wear gloves if you don't want it on your skin. And we can also have a look at our SDS. So SDS, anyone know what that stands for?
Safety data sheet.
Safety data sheet, well done. What sort of information can you get from that?
What's in the product?
Yeah. Well, here's a handout for you. That's a SDS on brake fluid. We can share that between each other. This is where you get all your information on the safety with the chemicals that we're using. So it'll tell you how to handle it, where to store it, what PPE to wear, what to do in an emergency. Other thing we've got, cleaning solvents, brake clean, stuff like that. That's harmful, potentially hazardous. It is quite volatile. It's used a lot when cleaning brake parts. Again, SDS, if you're unsure of the PPE or how to use that safely, I do have another handout for brake parts cleaner. If you want to have a look through that, gives you all the information. Workshop hazards, slippery surfaces. So back to that brake cleaning, when you're using solvents and spray like that, always make sure you're wearing a face mask or respirator. And try not to spray it directly towards another person that might be working on the other side of the car. Workshop hazards. We can get slippery surfaces from spilling our brake fluid on the floor. Tripping hazards from tools, excessive noise, vibration. So we've got compressors going, we've got impact guns going. Make sure you're wearing proper PPE, earmuffs. Make sure you make everyone aware around you what you're doing as well. So how do we stop fluid spills? We can use a drain tray. We can, if we've got to take brake lines off, we would have a drain tray available so that all that can be collected and disposed of in a liquid hydrocarbon vessel for collection. Or we can clamp those brake lines off with brake pipe clamps so that we don't have any spillage at all. So there's some of the workshop hazards. Obviously we don't want tools lying around the workshop on the floor. Always keep your tools and all that in an area where they're easily accessible and not a trip hazard. Always clean up your fluid spills. So we'll move on to our next slide where we're talking about assessing potential risks with tools. So when we're using our tools for inspecting, servicing brakes, anyone know what that tool is? Vernier caliper, which measures the thickness of the rotor. It can also measure depth. So when we're using our tools, we've got to make sure that our tools are properly maintained. We're going to inspect them first, and we're going to make sure that they're not damaged and that they're reading correctly. A lot of places get their tools calibrated, especially measuring equipment. It needs to be calibrated probably every 6 months. Otherwise your reading may not be correct. So we can have a visual, check for visual damage, leaks and component wear. That's obviously looking at everything, make sure our brake hoses aren't leaking, they're not frayed, they're not starting to crack. Make sure there's no physical damage. Cars get abused quite a bit, so they do get bunged up. So make sure there's no physical damage. Measure our brake pads and compare it against manufacturer's specifications. We can also test our brake fluid with a boiling point tester. So our boiling point tester gets put in the brake fluid and it measures the moisture content. So we can tell if our brake fluid needs changing by a boiling point tester. Or if you have no idea when your brake fluid was last changed, change it anyway. Doesn't cost a lot of money, and it's brakes, we need to be safe at all times. Examine the rotors for any kind of warping, scoring, cracking, heat damage. Inspect the brake lines for deterioration and leakage. Before we do any type of work, we always fill out a Tape 5, a risk assessment, so that we can assess any risks and hazards, and we can put controls measures in so we don't get hurt and we don't hurt anyone else. So we can utilise a Tape 5 risk assessment, or we can do a JSA, a job safety analysis, which is quite extensive, and document all the stuff that could happen with risks and hazards and what controls we can put in place to eliminate that risk. Because everyone needs to be safe when they're working. Any questions, anybody? Are you familiar with the Tape 5? Good, good. We'll just move on to our next PowerPoint slide. These are our control measures. Obviously, number one is brake dust. How do we control brake dust and keep it contained? Some places will have a vacuum where they will vacuum all that brake dust into a separate area, and they will keep all that brake dust and have it disposed of in a proper manner because it's toxic. A lot of places, I wouldn't have seen a lot of places that have something to this extent, but I have seen vacuum cleaners for brake dust. The best way in our situation, in every workshop situation, is wet cleaning. Water-based cleaning methods are probably the best because we are suppressing all those airborne particles. When it's dry and it's dust, it gets airborne. So we use a wet cleaning method to suppress the dust during disassembly, so we can stop it from becoming airborne and breathing it in. So hose it down into a drain tray. Wet it all down. Other thing is proper ventilation, fume extraction fans or dust extraction fans. That's another way. Work in a well ventilated area, especially when you're using brake clean or any type of volatile cleaning product. Make sure you're wearing your respirator, your face mask, your gloves and your goggles. Any questions? No? Okay, so safe work practices and PPE. So, as I have previously explained, nitrile gloves for chemical protection, safety glasses, goggles, eye protection. You know, you do not want brake fluid in your eyes. Respiratory protection when working with potential dust exposure. So a proper respirator with filters in if you're working with brake dust. Safe cleaning techniques. Never use compressed air to clean brake assemblies or components. As we mentioned previously, they can disperse harmful particles. Use vacuum or wet cleaning only. Always follow your manufacturer's specific procedures and torque specifications when you reassemble everything. Every nut and bolt on a car has a specific tightening torque. So you need to make sure that we are putting everything back and making sure everything is tightened to the manufacturer's specs. Brakes are highly important in a car. They are a major safety device of a vehicle. So does everyone know what brakes do? Yeah, what do they do? Enlighten me, Brian.
Slow the car down until it stops.
Is he 100% correct? He is, isn't he? The brakes slow the car down and hold it at a stop. So if we haven't tightened those brake calipers up properly, or we haven't put that wheel back on and torqued it up, we have a potential hazard coming, don't we? A potential fatality. So if we run out of brakes due to leaving the brake line loose or not tightening the brake calipers, we can cause a fatality, not only to ourselves, but other members of the public. And that could have serious consequences later on, could get legal. So brakes, very important to make sure that the job's done properly. So, moving along. Inspection and service procedures. So thoroughly examine all brake components, visible damage, wear patterns and potential failure points. And we need to report these things. So customers are aware, the driver, the owner is aware that they potentially have a safety issue with their vehicle. Measurement, use calibrated tools to measure pad thickness, rotor thickness and run out. Run out, disc rotor run out. Anyone know what that means? It means the rotor isn't running true anymore. It's not going round and round. Anyone know what tool we would use to check that? It doesn't matter if you don't, because the next one we're doing is tools with brakes. We use a dial gauge. As it's going around, we're measuring the warpage and the lateral run out. Fluid assessment. Test brake fluid for contamination and moisture content and proper level. It's got to have the right level, it's got to have the right amount of brake fluid in it. We mentioned the moisture content before. Once it absorbs moisture, lowers the boiling point temperature of the brake fluid. That means every time you brake, those brake fluid is heating up too much when it's contaminated with moisture. Component integrity. Make sure everything's tight. Make sure nothing's loose, nothing's hanging off. Check for cracks, deterioration, anything that's going to compromise our braking system. Functional testing. Obviously, we're going to drive it on the road, check the brake pedal, make sure it's not sinking to the floor, make sure our handbrake works. We need our handbrake to work. When you park on a hill, you want your handbrake to hold the car. You don't want it running down a hill and crashing into someone or another vehicle. And a handbrake is also used as an emergency stopping mechanism. If you need to slow down, your brakes aren't working, you would implement a handbrake to assist in emergency braking. Any questions? Wow. Okay everyone, we'll move on from this one on to the next presentation slide we have there. Compliance with workplace policies and procedures, regulatory requirements, workplace specific protocols and inspection checklists. So most workplace policies and procedures aren't going to be any different to the manufacturer's specifications. However, they may have their own policies and procedures set in place, because a workshop manual from the manufacturer might say wear limit for brake pads 1 mil, whereas a workshop policy might say 3 mil. They want to change your brake pads at 3 mil in that specific workshop, because the lower the brake pad gets, the more heat it's going to transfer because of the pad material. But some workshop manuals from the manufacturer might say 1 mil is your wear limit. Let it go down to 1 mil, but a workshop might say, no way are we doing that. They want to get it changed. So workshop policies and procedures can be different from manufacturers' policies. Proper hazard reporting and incident documentation. So we're going to report everything we find. We're going to report it on the job card, or we're going to report it to our supervisor. Any kind of incidents, if you have an accident or whatever, we need to fully make sure we have an incident report. Basically to document everything so we've got a record of it in case anything can happen in the future. So we've got to make sure that we're doing proper hazard reporting. Maintaining comprehensive service records. So you want to keep a service record of what you're doing on that car at all times, and we want to make sure it's available for the next time we work on it. So we can see, oh look, last time we reported that your brakes were down to 4 mil, and we suggest that next service you might want to change it. Things like that. History of service. You want to make sure we're looking at that as well. Technician training. Obviously, technician training is vital. That's why we have training centres like this, so that we can properly train students in how to do things correctly, the correct procedures. Otherwise, any backyard person change their brake pads, inhale a lot of brake dust, don't put the calipers on properly, then we've got issues. So proper training, proper accreditation as well. Document competency in brake system servicing. So when you guys finish this unit, you will be deemed competent in this unit of competency, AUR TTB 101, which is inspect and service brake systems. Okay, so summary and key takeaways. Risk assessments. Got multiple hazards, so we've got to evaluate that before we start work, don't we? Make sure we're aware of the risk. If we can remove the risk altogether, that would be great. But sometimes we can't, so we've got to control what we're doing. Hierarchical of controls, so implementing engineering controls first, obviously jacking it up, putting it on safety stands, using proper lifting equipment, safe working loads. Always make sure you read the standard operating procedure and do a hoist inspection. Always check everything before you use it. And always check everything after you use it to make sure it's still okay for the next person to use. Okay, followed by administrative controls and PPE. PPE, vitally important. Document all your procedures, document all the inspection steps, ensuring that you tick that off when you've done it. If it says inspect brake fluid level and condition, make sure you do it. If it says inspect brake calipers and hoses and condition, tick that off and make sure you do it. So you've got to follow the steps, service procedures, and make sure we're complying with all that within our workplace policies and requirements. Like it says on the bottom there, commitment to safety and brake system servicing protects you guys, ensures the vehicle reliability, and safeguards the public and your boss in case something happens. Vitally important. Rightio, that brings us to the conclusion of that. I have a quick 5-question quiz that you guys can have a look at and answer these questions, and then we can go through them when everyone's done. So today's date, 12th of August, 25 if you don't know. That's it, Jensen. 5 questions, that's all we've got. Everyone done? Rightio. Looks like everyone's finished. Balin, how you going, buddy? Okay, so question 1. Which of the following is a common hazard when working on brake systems? Electrical shock, inhalation of brake dust, exposure to loud noise, or ultraviolet radiation? Brake dust, isn't it? B. True or false, brake dust may contain harmful substances like asbestos. True story, isn't it? What hazard is posed by servicing hot brake components immediately after a vehicle has been used? Thermal burns? Of course it is, isn't it? It's going to be hot. We need to protect ourselves. Let the car cool down before you start touching anything, because it can be red hot. It's not chemical burns, it's not frostbite, as suggested there in the multiple choice questions. Which situation could lead to a slip hazard in the workshop? Using a torque wrench, brake fluid leaking on the floor, leaving tools in a toolbox, or using compressed air? Absolutely, well done guys. True or false, wearing gloves can help reduce the risk of skin exposure to brake fluid? True. Okay guys, well done, that was brilliant, top effort. I have a little participant feedback form for you to fill out. You don't need to put your name on it because it's anonymous, and I don't need to see it. Just be truthful and suggest whatever you need to suggest, whether that's positive feedback, negative feedback, we can all have room for improvement on anything. But thanks for attending, guys. Thank you, Malcolm, for coming and observing. And we'll see you again for our next training session. Thank you.